Before we begin, I want to offer a sincere thank you and full credit to Hale Dwoskin and Sedona Training Associates, and to Hale personally for giving me permission to share this audiobook with you. This reading is a little different from a traditional audiobook. I first created these recordings for my own practice with releasing, shaping the material in a way that helped it settle more deeply into my life. Because of that, you'll hear a combination of Hale's original wording, passages I've rephrased for clarity, and a handful of personal reflections or references to related teachings that helped me understand the principles more fully. But you can rest assured, nothing essential has been removed. You're not missing any important points from the chapters. The core lessons and structure of the book are all intact. My aim isn't to replace Hale's voice, but to expand on the ideas. The additions, though, are simply my interpretations and may not reflect exactly what Hale intended. If you'd like the unfiltered teachings directly from the source, their website is linked in the description. I will say, despite my studies, I'm still not very good at releasing. Maybe by sharing this, we can help each other release and go free together. And with that, let's begin. The Sedona Method by Hale Dwoskin. Chapter 4. Dissolving your resistance. Rather than allowing the flow of life to carry us where we want to go, most of us spend a lot of time swimming upstream. We assume we have to struggle, force, and push against the current in order to get what we want. But what if that's not true? What if we could actually use the natural flow of life to support us in having what we want? What if life already contains a natural movement towards balance, intelligence, and resolution, and our real problem is that we keep arguing with it? The current is what Lester Levinson, the man who inspired the creation of the Sedona Method, called your own beingness. The same intelligence that grows trees, heals wounds, and keeps your heart beating without any effort from you. When you resist, you are essentially saying, I don't trust the river that's been carrying life since the dawn of time. I think I'll handle this with my own tiny paddles. And the river, patient as ever, says, all right then, but you're going to get very tired. You've probably experienced what being in a state of flow is like. Think of a day when everything worked perfectly. You just seemed to be in the right place, at the right time, doing exactly the right thing. Now think of a typical day. Which would you prefer? The greatest obstacle to being in the flow all day long, every day, is resistance to what is. The moment the mind says, no, I don't want this, it creates tension. And then, usually, we resist the tension as well. So now, we are not only resisting life, we're resisting our own reaction to life. This inner friction drains energy, clouds perception, and keeps us stuck. Resistance prevents us from moving ahead in all areas of our life, especially in the area of personal growth and happiness. You've probably noticed how willing you are at certain times to release, whereas at other times, you find it easier to put the book down and do something, anything else. It is exactly this kind of resistance that prevents us from following through on our good intentions. The good news is that resistance can be let go of just like any other feeling. Letting go of resistance does not mean you must allow others to control you. You can still stand up for what's right without resistance. This is important. Letting go of resistance does not mean becoming passive, numb, or uncaring. In fact, when the emotional charge drops away, what remains is often clearer, steadier, and far more effective. You don't lose your compassion, you lose the inner turbulence that was clouding it. The same way martial artists turn their enemy's energy against them by not resisting, every time you let go of the feeling of resistance, you have more strength with less effort and greater emotional resilience and stamina. What is resistance? Resistance is one of the main things that stops us from having, doing, and being what we want in life. In fact, we even resist the things we really like and care about. We resist success. What if I mess it up? We resist rest. I should be doing something productive. We resist joy. This can't last. We even resist love. This feels too vulnerable. And yes, we resist releasing. We tell ourselves, I really should let this go by now, and instantly there's resistance. And if someone tells us to do something, that's a surefire trigger for resistance. Even if we genuinely want to do it, we will still resist it. So even if you sincerely want to release your feelings, if you tell yourself you have to release or you should have released by now, what happens? You may find yourself resisting even more and doing the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing. When you're told that you should do something or you have to do something, what do you feel inside? Don't tell me what to do. Or perhaps you say to yourself, you have to work on that assignment, or you'd better not do that anymore. You may find yourself doing whatever it is even more. That's just the nature of our minds. We simply do not like being told what to do. Yet, we are continually shoulding on ourselves and then wondering why we are not having fun and why things are not getting done. Resistance manifests in many different ways. Let's say you find it hard to persuade yourself to release, even though you've heard enough by now to know that it could change everything for you. What happened? You hit resistance. Most likely, you turned releasing into a should. In situations like this, the should creates an opposing force equal to or greater than the force that you're exerting when you're trying to get something to happen. Resistance feels like trying to move forward with the brakes on. Anytime you feel like you have to, must, or should do anything, you're in resistance. Resistance is opposition to force, real or imagined. Resistance is pushing against the world so that it will push back. The feeling or thought, I can't, is resistance. It takes a conscious effort to overcome the unconscious effort, the habit of holding down the feelings. That unconscious habit is resistance. Resistance is just another program that we have manufactured to protect the other programs, wanting security, wanting approval, and wanting control, which we will learn more about in chapter 12. Resistance is when you haven't yet decided whether or not to do something, but you do it anyway, and it's difficult. To make it easy to do, All you need to do is decide to do it and do it, or decide not to do it and don't do it. Egoic wanting creates opposition in direct proportion to the intensity of its wanting. So when we force ourselves to release, to grow, or to change, we are generating the very opposition that makes it feel difficult. The moment you say, "I must let go," the unconscious mind replies, "Make me." And just like that, you're stuck in an invisible tug of war, both ends of the rope held by you. The more forcefully the ego pushes, the more the world seems to push back. Releasing is much softer than that. You can certainly have a deep resolve that you're going to let go of the suppressed emotional garbage you've been carrying, but the process itself is never confrontational. It never attacks. When you encounter obstacles in the form of resistance, stuckness, stubborn sensations, or uncomfortable feelings, releasing does not try to overpower them. Instead, it yields, it allows, it embraces. And when necessary, it simply walks around the obstacle, turning opposing energy into supportive energy, the foe into a friend. You can still have goals and strive to achieve them. You still know where you're going. You still know you want to release your limitations, but at the same time, you remain deeply at one with whatever the moment presents. Florence Scovel Shinn expressed this same principle beautifully in her classic book, The Game of Life and How to Play It. She wrote that as long as a person resists a situation, they will continue to meet it again and again. If they try to run away from it, it will simply run after them. She tells the story of a woman who needed money and understood the spiritual principle of abundance. Yet, she kept finding herself in business situations with a man who constantly spoke about lack and limitation. Being around him made her feel poor. Eventually, she began blaming him for her own financial struggles. But then she realized something important. She was resisting the situation. She was seeing two powers, good versus evil, God versus the devil, instead of one power, God. So, she decided to stop fighting it. Instead, she blessed the man and mentally baptized the situation success. She affirmed to herself, as there is only one power, this man is here for my good and my prosperity, just what he does not seem to be here for. Soon afterwards, through this very same man, she met someone who paid her several $1,000s for a service she provided, and shortly after that, the man quietly moved away and disappeared from her life. When she stopped resisting the situation, it reorganized itself. Shinn summarized this attitude with a powerful biblical instruction. Agree with thine adversary quickly. In other words, do not fight the appearance of adversity. Acknowledge it, allow it, and remain undisturbed. When you no longer oppose it emotionally, it often dissolves under its own weight. An inharmonious situation usually reflects some inner discord within us. But when there is no emotional reaction left to feed it, it simply fades away from our path. When we stop energizing a situation with inner resistance, we stop fastening ourselves to it. The circumstance may still need practical action, of course, but inwardly we are no longer glued to it. And from that freer state, wiser action becomes possible. And more often than not, the situation rights itself without much doing on your part. This insight points directly to what we are doing with the Sedona Method. When a feeling arises, frustration, fear, resentment, or resistance, our usual habit is to fight it, suppress it, analyze it, or run away from it. But all of those responses are forms of resistance, and resistance is exactly what keeps the feeling in place. What you fight strengthens, and what you resist persists. Releasing takes a completely different approach. Instead of opposing the feeling, you simply allow it to be there. You welcome it. And that welcoming does not mean collapsing into the feeling, indulging it, or turning it into a drama in your head, replaying mental movies and regrets. It simply means making space for it. It means focusing on the feeling rather than the person or situation which seems to have caused it. In a sense, you agree with the adversary. Not because the feeling is right or wrong, but because fighting it only feeds it. When you allow the sensation to be present without resisting it, something remarkable begins to happen. The energy that was locked in opposition starts to soften. The tension begins to dissolve, and what once appeared to be an obstacle often becomes part of the path itself. The obstacles in your path define the path. What stands in the way becomes the way. Lester Levinson used to point to this very simply. He said, "Resistance is the only thing that keeps a feeling in place. Remove the resistance and the feeling is free to leave." When you really see that, resistance stops looking like an enemy. Instead, it starts to look more like a protective movement inside of us, an old program trying to keep other old programs in place because it believes they are keeping us safe. In other words, resistance always made sense to the part of us that created it. Resistance doesn't want to give anything up. In some of his talks, Lester reassured his students, if you have any concepts of giving up on the path, the only thing you'll be giving up is your miseries and your limitations. On the path, you take on more and more and more until you have the universe. He warned people not to let the mind sabotage you. He would say, don't allow your mind to say you're going to lose everything if you let go of this feeling. Don't allow your mind to say, I will die if I go free. That might sound dramatic, but Lester insisted that this fear is actually operating inside most of us. He said, these feelings are strong within you right now. I will die if I go free. If you didn't have that, you'd be free. In other words, resistance often comes from a very deep survival instinct. Lester explained that the emotions we hold on to were originally created as pro-survival. Think about the emotional scale he described from the last chapter. In apathy, the instinct is, if I curl up and hide, maybe they won't hurt me. Animals sometimes play dead for the same reason. In grief, there's the hope that someone will come along and comfort us. In anger, the instinct is to fight, to take action so that we can survive. Each emotional pattern once served a purpose, but unconsciously, that survival instinct can still say the same message today. If I let go of these feelings, I might not survive? Every one of you fears going free, Lester said. That fear, often invisible to us, is what sits behind much of our resistance. But once we begin to see it clearly, something can shift, because when you recognize that resistance is just an old survival reflex, it becomes much easier to soften toward it. You are safe to feel unsafe. Instead of fighting the resistance, you can meet it with gentleness. You might even say inwardly, "Thank you for trying to protect me. I'm safe now. You can rest." You move from force to cooperation, from inner struggle to ease. The Sedona Method is simply a way of gently undoing that old survival reflex. Releasing resistance. You can use the basic 3-step releasing process to let go of resistance any time that you're feeling it. You welcome the resistance in this moment. You ask yourself, could I let go of this resistance? Could I allow myself to feel resistance in this moment? Could I welcome the feeling of resistance? Then ask, would I? When? And repeat, could I let go of this resistance? Could I allow myself to feel this resistance in this moment? Could I welcome the feeling of resistance? Would I? When? Once you really understand that resistance can be released, you will often find yourself letting go without a lot of extra thought. Remember that both yes and no are perfectly acceptable answers. In fact, you will often release even if the answer you give is no. So answer the questions lightly. Avoid second-guessing yourself or getting into long internal debates about whether you should release or what might happen if you do or don't. Whatever your response, simply move on and keep asking the questions. At first, the results may feel subtle, but very quickly, especially if you stay persistent, the shifts become more noticeable. You may also discover that resistance often appears in layers, so it may take a little time to release a topic completely. But each layer you let go of is gone for good. For example, Jane had been teaching time management courses in corporations for years, and yet, as she put it, her own ability to procrastinate was still alive and well. Instead of beating herself up about it, she discovered that it was easier to release the resistance around the task. She asked herself, could I welcome how much I dislike this dreadful task? Could I welcome how much I dislike this dreadful task? Then she began starting with small pieces of it. Gradually, she developed momentum. No, she didn't suddenly leap forward with choirs of angels singing in the background, but she did move forward more easily. She got unstuck. What Jane was doing here was profound. Instead of fighting the feeling she had about the task, she allowed it to be there. 3 more ways to dissolve resistance. Number 1, release on your surroundings. Since each of us carries around a backlog of resistance, we can actively look for things in the environment to which we feel resistant and let go on them. Sometimes Sedona students would even release on objects they had no resistance to. Try the following. Look around the room you're in right now and pick any item. Focus your resistance on it by asking, could I allow myself to feel my resistance to that item as best as I can? Then use the 3 basic releasing steps to let it go. Could I let it go? Would I? When? Look around the room and pick any item. Could I allow myself to feel my resistance to that item as best as I can? Could I let go of my grip? Could I stop holding it down? Would I? When? Repeat this exercise several times in a row and then go about your day. You will notice that everything in your life gets easier the more you let go of resistance. This is a great exercise to do when you have downtime at work, while you're commuting, or any time you simply want to feel more in the flow. Number 2, release on both sides. Another terrific way to release resistance is to admit that when you're resisting having, being, or doing something, you are probably also resisting not having, being, or doing it. Think of something that you resist doing. Now ask yourself, could I allow myself to let go of resisting doing that thing? Would I? When? Then ask yourself the opposite. Could I let go of resisting not doing that thing? Would I? When? Keep going back and forth between both sets of questions until you feel the resistance dissolve. Then, notice how much easier it is to do that particular thing. The same process is useful for releasing on items you resist having and being. Simply substitute the words having or being for the word doing. Here are 2 possibilities. Let's say you are resisting not having money, a common feeling for sure. Consider that you are also probably resisting having it. If you were not resisting having money, you'd probably already have more than enough. Or let's say you resist being alone, not having a relationship. I guarantee that you're also resisting having a relationship. Release on both sides of these issues and watch what happens in your life. I think you're in for a pleasant surprise. Number 3, permission to hold on. Often, when we're trying to release and it's not happening, we know we're hitting a wall of resistance. At that moment, it's easy to think, I must be doing this wrong. But usually, what's happening is much simpler. A part of you doesn't yet feel safe to let go. If part of you didn't believe it served you in some way, you would not hold on. In a strange way, resistance always makes sense to the part of you that created it. Now, the Sedona Method isn't about digging into your past and psychoanalysis, but it's important to know this. And if this happens to you, giving yourself permission to hold on to your stubborn resistance is the third effective way to approach it. Instead of fighting the resistance, give yourself permission to have it. Ask yourself, could I give myself permission to hold on for a moment? Could I stop beating myself up? Could I let go of the fight? If this is how I feel, this is how I feel. Could I give myself permission to just hold on for this moment? Once you allow yourself to do what you're already doing, space opens up inside, and very often the resistance begins to soften on its own. It may sound paradoxical, but permission dissolves resistance far more easily than force ever could. Could I give myself permission to hold on? Yes or no are still perfectly acceptable answers. If the resistance does not let go completely, go back to the basic releasing questions. Could I let go of holding on? Could I let go of holding on? Would I? When? You can go back and forth several times between giving yourself permission to hold on and gently allowing yourself to let go in the usual manner. Bob describes himself as a person who has a fair amount of trouble with resistance. Normally, I am decisive and directed, but a couple of days ago, I had a day where I couldn't decide on anything. It was as though my pencil was stuck in a fan. Finally, I decided to let the pencil be stuck, and the situation righted itself immediately. He generally finds that his resistance dissolves by diving into it or asking, could I just allow myself to be as resistant as I am? Could I just allow myself to be as resistant as I am? Would I? When? Exploration. Getting in touch with resistance. During Sedona Method courses, we frequently do a very simple yet powerful exercise that's designed to help us get in touch with how resistance feels on a physical level. The more we can connect to the feeling of resistance, the easier it is to let it go. I therefore recommend approaching this exercise from your heart rather than your mind. In other words, don't try to figure out the correct outcome. There isn't one. This exercise can be done in two ways. Number 1, exploring physical resistance on your own. Put your hands together in a prayer position. Arbitrarily decide which hand will push and which hand will resist. Then allow yourself to push gently against the other hand which is resisting, and have that hand hold its position. While you are doing this, allow yourself, as best as you can, to get in touch with what it feels like to resist. Next, let go of resisting the push without trying to control or do anything in particular with your hands. Just let your hands do what they do. Repeat this activity several times, switching which hand is pushing and which is resisting, and allow yourself to notice your emotions as you let go. Spend some time after you're done reflecting on the exercise and using the basic releasing process to let go of whatever thoughts and feelings come up. Number 2. Exploring physical resistance with a partner. To begin, both partners stand facing each other and make eye contact. Select which partner will push and which will resist. Then you and your partner will touch your palms together and one will push gently. As they do, the other simply resists the push, holding both their hands steady. The pressure should be strong enough so you can both feel the resistance, but not so much so that anyone falls over. As your partner pushes, allow yourself to get in touch with what it feels like to resist that push. Then, let go of the resistance as best as you can, without trying to control or do anything in particular with your hands. Just let your hands do what they do. Keep switching the roles several times until both partners have a clear feeling sense of what it's like to resist and let go of resistance. Written releasing. The things I have to do worksheet. List everything you have to do. Take each item, one at a time, and write down your now feelings about it. There may be several emotions involved. Check especially for resistance as you do this exploration, along with any other emotions that arise. Then you can combine every technique you've learned so far and release on each feeling and any resistance to completion. Once you are fully released, you can put a tick. Remember also to release your so-called positive feelings so you can keep moving to higher energy states. Process for letting go of resistance. You can use this process on a specific topic you pick from the Things I Have to Do worksheet, or it can be used simply to free you from the inner holdback that we all experience as resistance. Begin by thinking of something that you believe you should do, must do, or have to do, or it's important that you do. Any of those. Notice how you tighten up inside when you think about it, how you push back. Could you welcome that feeling of resistance? Could you just allow it to be here? Then could you let it go? Would you? When? Now think of that same thing or something else that it seems extremely important to get yourself to do, or that someone else told you that you must do, like losing weight, stopping smoking, making more money, paying your bills, or being out of debt. Notice how that immediately engenders resistance inside of you. Could you welcome that feeling of resistance? Then, could you let it go? Would you? When? Next, think of something else in your life to which you have resistance. We also tend to resist things that we have to do repeatedly, even simple things like brushing our teeth, taking out the garbage, or mowing the lawn. Maintenance tasks that we do frequently, such as washing the dishes, are big issues for a lot of people. Truly feel what it's like to resist. Welcome it. Allow it to be here. Then, could you let it go? Would you? When? Find something else in your life that you resist. There are certain sensations that we resist, like loud noises or bright lights, or certain inflections in people's voices, even certain smells. Find one of those kinds of items that you resist. Could you welcome that resistance into your awareness? Could you just embrace it? Then, could you let it go? Would you? When? We also resist certain people. So think of a person in your life right now to whom you have resistance. Remember, resistance doesn't mean you don't care about them. Sometimes we even resist the people whom we love. Could you allow that resistance into your awareness? Could you welcome it? Could you let it in and let it be? Then could you let it go? Would you? When? Another big thing we resist is our feelings. We very often don't want to feel what we're feeling, especially if we've labeled the emotion as unpleasant. Our instinct is to escape it, and what could be more normal? But the truth is, there is no escape from a feeling. There are plenty of pseudo-escapes, things that give temporary relief from the discomfort, but they don't actually dissolve the feeling. They just push it out of awareness for a little while. And just because a feeling has been pushed down doesn't mean it's lost its intensity. Very often, it's still there, quietly influencing our thoughts, our reactions, our decisions, and our relationships. So instead of trying to escape the feeling, the invitation here is to simply notice it. Right now, can you sense how you resist certain feelings? Could you allow that resistance into your awareness? Could you welcome it? Then could you let it go? Would you? When? A strong urge to turn away from the feeling may come. Observe it, but don't act on it. Keep allowing the feeling to be there. Right now, notice the urge to get away from the feeling. Could you allow that urge to escape, to be here? Could you welcome the part of you that wants to run? Then gently ask, could I let go of needing to escape this feeling? Would I? When? Another big thing we resist is our feelings. We very often don't want to feel what we're feeling, especially if we've labelled the emotion as unpleasant. Most people resist certain emotions more than others, like fear or anger. Right now, can you sense how you resist certain feelings? Could you welcome that resistance into your awareness? And could you just allow yourself to resist for a moment? Then, could you let it go? Would you? When? Next, think of something you resist doing, even though you enjoy it. Ironically, many of us resist things that are good for us, things that we like to do. There's still hesitation, there's still holdback. That's why it can seem as though we never find time for pleasurable activities. Could you just allow yourself to feel the resistance? Welcome it into your awareness. Then, could you let it go? Would you? When? We also resist things about our body, certain sensations, or the way it looks. Even when we're at an ideal weight, as if that were possible in our weight-obsessed culture, most of us just obsess about our weight and the way we look, and we resist however we look, even if we're having a good hair day. So find something about your physicality that you resist, something about your body, either the way it feels or the way it looks, or something like that. Simply welcome the resistance into your awareness. Could you let it go? Would you? When? Any one of the topics above would be ideal for further exploration. Use this process anytime you feel resistant or would simply like to get more into the flow of life. Staying in the flow. If there was no resistance, we would all go free very quickly. Therefore, it's important for us to keep releasing constantly on resistance in order to allow our feelings to come up and move out. As you continue reading this book and working on the processes it contains, remember to release on resistance anytime you feel stuck. Here are 3 important tips for handling resistance and staying in the flow. Number 1, ask, don't tell. We've already discussed what happens when someone tells you that you have to or should do something. It immediately brings up resistance. Your imperatives also trigger resistance in others. So, be clever. Avoid bringing up unnecessary resistance in others by asking them to do what you want them to do rather than telling them. If you get into this habit, you'll find that you get a lot more cooperation. By the way, I would also recommend that you communicate in this fashion with yourself in order to get more cooperation and less resistance from within as well. Number 2, do what you do and don't do what you don't do. Very often, we feel that we should be doing something differently than the way we're doing it, or that we should be doing something that we're not doing. The way around this dilemma is to allow yourself to do what you're doing when you are doing it, and to not do what you're not doing when you're not doing it, without the extra dimension of shoulding on yourself. Anytime you find yourself shoulding, take a moment to release your resistance. Please understand that this doesn't mean staying stuck in a rut. Actually, the results will be the exact opposite. As you let go of shoulds and the corresponding resistance that shoulding engenders, you'll find yourself easily doing whatever you're doing and not obsessing over that which you are not doing. This includes anything that you've been trying to get yourself to do or to stop doing. You will be breaking out of the ruts that resistance has already created in your life. Number 3, ease off the pressure. Does what you're doing feel hard? This is a clear indication that you've hit a wall of your own resistance. You are probably pressuring yourself or feeling pressure from someone else. If you are pressuring yourself, make a conscious decision to take the pressure off. As a result, you'll probably find that you're getting done whatever you're trying to do a lot more easily, more quickly, and even more efficiently and enjoyably. Here's an interesting fact. You can't feel others pushing you. You can only feel yourself pushing back. Thus, if you feel that others are pressuring you, let go of your feelings of wanting to push back or resisting their pushes. As a result, you'll find that whatever you're doing will be done with much more ease and grace. Before you go on to the next chapter, explore how resistance is blocking the intentions you wrote down at the end of chapter 1. As you let go of your resistance in these areas, begin noticing the ease and flow that's always there, as well as the increased ease and flow that shows up as you let go of resistance. The more you practice letting go of resistance, the better you'll feel and the easier life will become. Resistance can be a major obstacle to having what you want and feeling the way you want to feel. However, you can easily let it go and enjoy the benefits of a life without resistance, filled with all that you choose. Before we end today's audiobook, I want to share something I am personally noticing as I work with this idea of resistance. One of the things I'm starting to realize is that a big part of why we resist situations so strongly is because letting go of resistance can feel like defeat. It can feel as though if we stop fighting what's happening, we're somehow admitting that we've lost. And underneath that, there's often another fear as well. If I stop resisting this, what if it never changes? What if this is just my life now? What if this is final? What if I am doomed? In an upcoming chapter, we'll learn how it's the want to change things that actually stops us from changing things. But the more I read into the Sedona Method, Lester Levinson, and other spiritual material, the more I'm beginning to question those assumptions that say that whatever is happening right now is permanent, because that doesn't really match the nature of life. The author U.S. Anderson writes that there are no finalities and no real defeats in this universe. Nothing is fixed. Everything is in motion. Everything is constantly changing. The only reason something seems unchangeable is because it is changing. It's just changing into more of the same because you are the same. So maybe the situation we're in right now, the one that feels frustrating or heavy, isn't a life sentence after all. Maybe it's just something we're passing through. Maybe it's a gift to teach us something, to show us something, to help us evolve and grow. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. How many times have you looked back on something and said to yourself, I definitely don't want to go through that again, but I'm glad it happened, because it taught me to become more, to give more, to share more, to be more. Sometimes we're so immersed in the experience that it feels like we're surrounded by the enemy. Our judgment gets clouded because we're right in the middle of it. But I'm starting to consider the possibility that one day I might look back on situations like the one I'm in currently with a sense of relief, realizing that they did change after all. But that wasn't the true gift. The true gift was the fact that I had changed. Life wasn't punishing me or trapping me in something I hated. It reminds me of my gymnastics coach. He asked me to do a move and I was scared, and he said to me, I wouldn't tell you to do it if I didn't know you could. God, the universe, the higher power, whatever you want to call it, would not put you through this if he didn't know you could make something from it. You could use it to your advantage. You could use every single bit of it and make something of yourself and give something worthwhile to the world. Maybe life is happening for us and not to us. And the more we stop fighting the moment, the more clearly we begin to see where the current is actually taking us.